Last week, I introduced the issue, which I think is a fundamental issue in our contemporary society. It really begins in the Age of Reason in the 1700s, which is the beginning of the value of autonomy. So I talked about that last week in the sense that basically the world, and this came down from the Catholic Church, really in terms of Europe and so forth, but it was very existent throughout the religious world of the time. In the Islam, in the Muslim world and so forth, there was a perception of authority, right? And the fact that a person would figure out his own ideas was not really promoted. So the fact is, what the Age of Reason started saying is the human being can think on their own. The human being has the right to make decisions. Right? We talk about rights, democratic rights. Human beings have these democratic rights. Now the truth is, I pointed out to you that really Torah also has a certain level of autonomy as a value already inherent in Torah, because there's a concept of making decisions. The fact is that really in a certain way, the concept of lo b'shamayim hi, the fact that Akash Baruch Hu gave over the Torah to Chazal, and Chazal renders a decision in a certain way, it's a certain aspect of autonomy, in the sense that God, as the authority, is having a limitation here. But the fact that lo b'shamayim, he says, you passed on your authority to us. So obviously, Akash Baruch Hu, who had the authority, says, I want you to make your own decisions. Right, so that really is an aspect of autonomy. The autonomy within Torah, though, is an autonomy within knowledge. And we talked about this last week a little bit in terms of autonomy, but the truth is that the world did begin focusing on autonomy. So while there's a reality of autonomy within Torah values, we started living in a world which, rather than having the imposition of the authority of a church or authority of the king or something, the divine right of kings and so forth, we now started living in a world where we started having this development of autonomy and the values of the individual and the thinking of the individual. With that idea, you started having individuals thinking that they're right. Okay, because in a certain way, when you say a person can make decisions, you're basically saying that there's something within the individual who can determine whether they are right or not. Okay, so the fact is in the beginning, it wasn't moral relativism at the time, but the fact is there was a certain aspect of the individual making that decision. I just saw a statement, for example, by Luther. And the development of Protestantism was also a development of autonomy, where Luther said, God is basically your understanding of what really touches you and touches your heart and so forth. You know, the person starts saying, I believe the God within me. Okay, really what the person is saying is, I make decisions for myself. I just call this voice within me God. But the fact is, it's really a perception of something within himself who makes statements. So the truth is that this is starting to give value to personal perceptions, personal values. And this developed what I would call the Jewish Reformation. And one of the big issues that in Hashkafah is how the Torah world has to relate to the Jewish Reformation. And the Reformation basically consists of two things, two different sides to the Reformation. One of them was the development of Reform Judaism, and the other was the development of Zionism, of secular Zionism. Now we talked a little bit of Reform Judaism last week, because Reform Judaism really was, in a certain way, it really came about from a value of autonomy. I told you about a Reform rabbi I once heard spoke, who basically said that there's a value in Nishma v'nasa. Yeah, there could be a value in doing mitzvot, but only if you personally find value in it. Now that truth is that actually is the modern perspective of Reform Judaism. Okay, when Reform Judaism started having more tradition, you know, a lot of Reform people say, see, they're coming back and so forth, but people didn't recognize when Reform Judaism started promoting tradition, they made a very big difference. It wasn't tradition as a mitzvah. It was, if you personally find meaning in this behavior, because it has been done through tradition and because you find some midrashic literature that gives value to it and so forth, then you should go ahead and do it. But in ritual, there's no such thing as an obligation. give you an example of what that means. I was once talking to a Reform rabbi years ago in Denver, and I said to him, I don't get it. Why don't you? There's a whole problem with Gittin now. You have questions of mamzeras, right? There's a real problem. What's wrong with you just telling your Koreans that they should go get a get? Right? It's no skin off them. Let them get a get. This way, there'll be no problems. Right? So just tell your Koreans to get a get. And he said he couldn't. Be contrary to Reform Judaism to tell his congregants to get a get. If he can explain the idea to the congregant and say, hey, listen, it's a good idea for you to get a get, or for the Jewish people, and this, and your kid will have less problems in terms of integration and all these things, and he buys it, that's great, super. I'll give all those arguments. But the minute he does it because I, the rabbi, as an authority, tells him to do it, that's no longer Reform Judaism. That's a significant perception within Reform Judaism. Okay, that just gives you an idea of what's happening there, and it obviously runs in the contrary to the concept of halachic authority, of the authority of halacha, and the concept of mitzvah, the very aspect of doing it because it is a command. Okay, the perception of Reform Judaism is that ritual should not be in that range, because that way you will not get the meaning. You have to have the meaning first. Okay, and therefore what Reform Judaism did in the beginnings was challenge all the rituals. Okay, and they basically started saying this ritual, you throw away this ritual, you throw away, because they didn't see any value in it. Not only that, they began to see a lack of value in it. So, for example, Reform Judaism in its early inception. I mean, the fact is Reform. I mean, it's well known that the first Reform graduating class in Cincinnati served non-kosher food on purpose to make a statement. We are bedavka serving this, whatever, seafood, whatever. I mean, whatever they. I think they had, what is it, shrimp cocktails and stuff like that. But yeah, because this is irrelevant. But in Europe, a lot of people don't recognize Reform Judaism is very much against Mila. They found that Mila was barbaric, and they encourage Jews not to have Mila. Because why? Why? Doesn't make any sense. What are you getting Mila for? Okay? So the response is, we're doing it because it's a chiyuv. The truth is the Rambam makes a very interesting statement about Mila in the Or Nevuchim, which people don't recognize. But the Rambam says, why is Mila the sign of the bris between us and the Kodesh Baruch Hu? Because the Rambam says, because the only reason that a sane human being would do a Mila on his son is if God commanded him. Because what person would do this on his son without being obligated to do it by God? What person would want to do this on his son? Okay. So the fact is that and therefore the fact that you're doing Mila is an absolute statement that I believe in God. Because otherwise, why would you do it? So it's a powerful statement. The Reform came about and said, we don't want Mila anymore. And he started really pushing it was barbaric. That also became an issue with Mitzitza B'Peh, by the way. The fact is that one of the, let's say, rational reasons for the battle over Mitzitza B'Peh is because the Reform were very adamant about it, because that even looked more barbaric. You think about it. After you cut the kid, then you draw blood with your lips. They thought this was barbaric, so they attacked the Mila, and then they attacked Mitzitza B'Peh. That's disgusting. Yeah.
What about, I don't know if you're thinking of this one, but the Holy Blossom, for example, they now changed their whole congregation to face east.
Yeah.
So that would seem not like a tradition. It seems like that's a philosophy.
Well, the fact is, Reform Judaism is now much more Zionistic. Don't forget, the early Reform Judaism, we're going to get to it, basically, they were anti-Zionistic. Strongly anti-Zionistic, because they believed that Judaism was a religion and not a definition of peoplehood. So they basically challenged they for sure challenged any call for return to Zion, but they challenged the very concept of peoplehood. To a Reformed Jew, when you said you were a good German, my nation is German, my religion is Jewish. Same way as my next door neighbor's religion was Lutheran. Okay, and the fact is they were pushing this idea. And the truth is, in certain ways, if you look at Reform Judaism, it really represented almost the ideal religion of reason. Because basically it didn't really demand any of the rituals. It didn't demand any belief in necessarily in miracles. Right, the issues of this nature it was nice, simple religion, be moral and so forth and so forth, God and so forth and so forth, and that really was attractive to a lot of people. But they find it to the people it was the religion of reason.
But that philosophy basically says you can marry out. What's the difference?
Yeah, of course. But the fact is, marrying out would be what? Marrying out would be marrying someone who doesn't believe in your faith. So you might sit there and say, like any Catholic marries a Protestant. But there's still perceptions within religion that if you're Catholic, you marry a Protestant, you're obviously going to go through pressures to try and get your Protestant spouse to become a Catholic because you care about them. From a religious perspective, the idea that you can marry someone of a different faith is you can marry them, but the fact that you're uncomfortable with it, about that situation, because if you believe in the religion, you want your spouse to adopt the same religion. The truth is, if you really think about this in Al-Pi Torah, it's a very different perspective. It's not, and that's really what's going to lead to, because the split that happened there was that Reform Judaism really pushed the religion. What happened was there was a development of another trend in the Jewish world. As they moved out of the ghetto and as the development of this autonomy feeling and what do we believe in and so forth, they started seeing things very differently and so forth and so forth, another trend had developed, and that was the development of peoplehood, which came to almost a statement, we are a people, we are not a religion, which really was the definition of secular Judaism. And they really got to a point that there's religion without peoplehood and there was peoplehood without religion. And you think about things like the Shomer HaTzair, they used to had dances in Yom Kippur and serve pork or whatever. The fact is, because we don't want religion. We want peoplehood. We just want peoplehood. Now, the fact is, it came about from the development of people's own thinking, and they started thinking things differently and so forth and so forth. So once you started feeding the development of an individual, they start seeing things differently. Because a lot of what happens is what you're told to do. So you take a perception. Let me give you a perception. If you're told in Europe, pursuant to the Gimel Shvuot, to the famous 3 oaths, that supposedly we're not supposed to rebel against the nations of the world, right? That was the 3 oaths, right? We're not to rebel, we're not to go up there to Israel with force, and the 3rd Shvuot is that the non-Jews wouldn't persecute us so badly. So the perception, that's part of the argument. They didn't keep their shvuah, so we didn't keep ours. That, by the way, is one of the arguments for Eretz Yisrael. When people say, listen, the Holocaust shows they didn't keep their shvuah, so why do we have to keep ours for? I mean, there's whole problems with the whole concept there. It's a midrashic literature that seems to have some halachic force, but the truth is, Jews didn't want to rebel. There was a perception that you were supposed to act a certain way in the Galus and not fight back. You're supposed to, accept it. This was the Ratzon Hashem, and you're supposed to take it. So then you start having people starting to think with autonomy and so forth and so forth. I don't want to take it anymore. I'm bigger than that non-Jew over there. He wants to punch me, I'll punch him back. So what started developing was an attitude of we can do something. We can fight back. And the only response was, God tells you not to do this. They're going to sit there and say, oh, what do I have to listen to God for? If you're, it's the authority that tells me I have to do this, right? If you hear like the Torah Karta today, when they say it's God's command that we, don't cause problems to the non-Jewish nations, right? I mean, you hear them talking about it. It's God's command, because what human being on his own would make these kind of decisions to basically say, I'm just going to take it. But the fact is, what started to develop is this attitude within Jews of saying, hey, listen, we're this, and therefore what occurred was a reaction to the authority figure. See, so this really explains some of the things that are happening in the world, and it really explains what happens in terms of its reaction to Orthodox Judaism. as these things were happening around, in other words, there was a breakdown to the ghetto. There was a whole bunch of enlightenment. People were thinking. There was a perception of autonomy. You can think. You can work things out on your own. What do you think? And so forth and so forth. So some people said, yeah, we're a religion, and they just rejected the ritual of Torah and started developing their own religion called Reform Judaism, which really was a different religion. It was basically putting together new constructs of a religion. Now, if you think about that, that meant that it was willing to basically create a rift among the group that we would call the Jews. Okay, and the fact is that a few years ago there was actually an argument against Orthodox. There was an argument made against Orthodox for promoting a rift among the Jewish people by our attitude towards conservative and Reform Judaism and insisting on Gerus Galach and so on. So one of the responses that was happening among Reform and conservative people is that you have to accept these things for the unity of the Jewish people and the unity of Jews and so forth and so forth. You're causing a rift among Jewish people. And there was a Reform thinker named Eugene Borowitz. I don't know if anyone heard of him, but he was a major Reform thinker. He said, you know, if you were against rifts, you wouldn't have Reform Judaism. Because when we started, we created a rift. It was a Reformation. The Protestants didn't along with the Catholics, right? The Sunnis and the what's the other ones? The Shiites, they don't get along. So the truth is, Karaites and Rabbinites didn't get along. So the truth is, as a religion, Reform Judaism formed its own religion. So we expect there to be a rift. There was a rift. That's what happened. That's what happens when there's fights among religions. There's a rift. But you see, the thing is that there's another side to being Jewish, and that's peoplehood. And the fact is you had another movement developing at the same time, which said we're not a religion, we're a people. And they really downplayed the religion. And they started seeing things very differently. First of all, there was a very negative feeling towards the Talmud. They considered the Talmud to be the book of the exile. The diaspora Jew thinks like the Talmud. It's sort of like the beaten Jew, the Jew who's subservient. So they perceived the Talmud to be the document that was tied to the Galus and so forth and so forth. And where do you see the real Jewish spirit? Where do you see the real Jewish spirit from? From the Tanakh. David HaMelech, Shlomo HaMelech. These were the heroes. You know, there's an interesting thing that most people don't recognize. The Chidon HaTanakh in Eretz Yisrael did not start because of the Dati. Now it's all Datim and so forth and so forth. But a few years ago there was actually a Messianic Jew who was one of the finalists of the Chidon HaTanakh. A person of this persuasion in Israel who basically was a Jews for Jesus, and she really knew Tanakh. Okay? Because you have to understand, fundamentalist Christians really know the Bible. They really, really know the Bible. I know that we brought in, a few years ago, we brought in a guy by the name of J. David Davis to speak here in Toronto. It was Nishma and Jews for Judaism brought him in to speak. He was a Baptist minister who became a Noahide. It was all over the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and so forth and so forth. The story goes that he went up to his church, the Emmanuel Baptist Church, and ripped down the cross and said, "We're now Emmanuel." You know, and so we brought him in to speak. It was really fascinating. We actually had two times that he spoke. He spoke Sunday night at Shar Shemayim. We had 300 people to that, and then he spoke Monday night at the North York Library on Yonge Street, and that was specifically targeted to non-Jews, you know, and so forth. So it was very interesting because we had a talk on Sunday night. Should he wear a kippah? Should he not wear a kippah? This guy had a nice kippah. He had a kippah with Davin, the crochet kippah with Davin. It was really funny when he came in. He flew in on Shabbos, and there was a whole. He actually was staying with I think he he came in on Shabbos and went directly to Rabbi Skovak's for Shalosh Shudas. So I remember I didn't actually speak to him, make the arrangements, but I heard from Julius afterwards that there was a whole discussion like, okay, when are you going to come in? Because we had a program for educators on Saturday night. When you come in, so you'll come in for Friday, and then you have to figure out a place for Shabbos, and we're going back and forth. He looked at me and said, "What are you guys worried about? I'm a goy. I can travel on Shabbos. I'll fly in Saturday afternoon and tell me where to go. I'll take a cab." So he showed up on Shabbos. He went Shalosh Shudas. He flew in on Shabbos and went strictly to Rabbi Skovak's for Shalosh Shudas. So we had a discussion of whether what he should do with whether he should wear a kippah or not. So I was insistent that he shouldn't wear a kippah. In the shul, let him not wear a kippah, because I wanted to make it clear he wasn't Jewish, and who he was. And it was a very interesting thing. But what happened on Monday night, the reason I started this whole story, on Monday night, him and this non-Jew were getting into debate. Back and forth, Daniel, Yoshiyahu, back and forth. And I was listening. I was just sitting over here and listening. And the non-Jew, saying, well, the Rabbi Hecht is right there, because I was introduced as one of the hosts. Right? Well, the non-Jew says, Rabbi Hecht is right there. Why don't we ask him what he says? So David says, he's a rabbi. He has no idea about the Bible. Let's just keep talking. And then the other guy says, "Is that true, Rabbi?" I said, "Yes, it actually is. I mean, you guys know Daniel more than I do. That's for sure." Anyways, the point is, though, is the Chidon HaTanakh really came out of the establishment of the Tanakh as the Jewish spirit by the secular Zionists. And that's why David Ben Gurion, for example, was a tremendous scholar of the Tanakh. Because this was rejecting the Talmud. This was the true spirit of the Jewish people, going back to the land, David HaMelech, getting involved in agriculture. This was the big thing that was really pushed. And it wasn't necessarily as a religious document. It was, quote unquote, the myth of the Jewish people, where we get our national spirit. Okay? So what occurred is a new development happened. The development of peoplehood without religion. Okay? And the reason for that is because the idea of how people and religion, a nation and religion, come together really doesn't make any sense. They're two completely different definitions. Right? Religion means you have shared ideas. Nation means you have a shared culture, I wouldn't say a shared ethnic identity. What does religion have to do with peoplehood? Right? And the fact is, you're talking about intermarriage. Why is it okay for two Jews to get married, with one of them believing this and one of them believing that, but the two Jews were happy to get married, but you have a Jew and a non-Jew, and the non-Jew is a devout Noachide, and believes in God, and believes in this, and so forth and so forth, right? Maybe we should say, hey, it's better for those two people to get married. Even though if there was a devout Noachide, they wouldn't want to get married that way anyways. But the point is that in terms of sharing religion, Jews do not mean shared religion. Jews mean shared peoplehood. We have people who are not Jewish who believed in God. Eov is a classic example of that. According to one sheet in the Gemara, he was a non-Jew who believed in God. And there were people who believed in God when I say believed in Judaism. Believed in Judaism. Believe in Judaism does not make you Jewish. It's a peoplehood. But what does people have to do with religion? So what happened was there was this tremendous split. People now weren't dealing with this authority statement from outside, so they figured it out. So some moved away to religion, say, something, this idea of people, that's because back in the ancient times, this people developed this religion. So the religion was associated with the people. But not that the peoplehood really has validity, and now that we're out there in the world, we, like other religions, now we could drop that peoplehood aspect. It started there, but now it's spread out. Right? It's like Hellenism. It began with the Greeks, but then it went out to the world. So they say, hey, listen, now let's take this religion and spread it out to the world. We don't need peoplehood anymore. And then you have another group who said, no, we are a people. So what is the religion? The religion was the expression of our national spirit. But you have to write the right expression of national spirit, not this Talmudic expression, but the real expression of the Bible.
Isn't it like an anarchist convention, right? In a sense that how do you enforce this peoplehood?
Well,
how do you get consensus on this? That this is what our past is, this is what our future is, this is the direction we're going in.
Well, how does any people do that? The truth is that we do that by the people create some type of connection. You see, what's interesting about that, usually it's the land that forms the container for the people. So you put a bunch of people together on the land, and somehow they work it out what kind of society they want on that land. The point is that what kept us going through the diaspora was the religion. But a lot of these secularists say, we don't need this religion anymore, let's go back to the land. But when you get back to the land, what do they ask for in the land? To be like a nation like every other nation, and to define peoplehood by the land. Right? But the thing that's interesting about that is that the peoplehood can be a unifying perspective. Religions create rifts, but if you say here's peoplehood, peoplehood is collective. We want this whole group to come together as a people. Right? We want to bring them all together because they're all Jews. So the fact is that people who are strongly peoplehood oriented, they may wonder why the falashas are Jews or not, because they don't seem to share ethnic identity. But as a people, let's bring them over. Let's extend our people. Let's get together all our people. So the truth is, peoplehood is much more collective. You see, when the Reform Judaism began, it was much more of a rift. I say A, you say B. As peoplehood developed, it's like we're a people, but part of our people are those crazies who still follow the religion. But they're still part of the people. So we're going to try and still relate to them. Although we may try and get their kids not to do this anymore. We'll try and teach them other things to be more intellectual, to get it right. But it's a very different perspective happening over here. Very different dynamics happening. And this led to tremendous issues vis-a-vis how the Torah world was going to respond to these two groups. Okay?
Question: When was this happening? Mid 1800s?
Early to mid 1800s. Okay? I mean, the fact is that one of the reasons you have this tension is because from a frum world, we really held that they're people and the religion together. So the truth is that to the people breaking away to Reform Judaism, they can look at us as, that's the old-time religion, we're now got it straight. We argue with them. But the fact is, we still looked at them as, they're still Yidden, because we still extended the idea of peoplehood to them. We don't want anything to do with their mishigas, or this new faith, but we want to extend their knowledge to peoplehood. To the people who are pushing peoplehood, they'll welcome us in. They'll say, hey, we're all part of the people. But then they'd be advocating within this peoplehood ideas that were against the religion. So we were faced with a tension, and that really explains a lot of the issues that are happening within the Jewish world from the perspective of the Frum. Is how do we relate to encounters with people who are really pointing out that distinction between peoplehood and religion, and that's a real issue. When we talk to Jews, and up until let's say the Jewish Reformation, we had an idea: a Jew is a Jew. Maybe a Sephardi, right, may not share certain halakhic conclusions, but basically it's the same thing. We understood that there was a bond of religion and a bond of peoplehood, and the fact is that we may not understand how that bond works, although I have my own theories on that bond, but we do understand that there is a bond that connects us as people and as religion, right, together. So a person says they're a Yid, we basically mean, okay, there's a chaver with you, it's a sense of peoplehood, we're interested in together. There's also a sense of a shared faith. So you're part of a faith community, co-religionist, but you're also part of this religious identity. But now you're relating to people now you're called upon to relate to people who are outside those definitions. So the truth is, as you see people going off to another religion, okay, i.e. dropping Torah, right, how do you relate to them? And why would you be interested in spreading Torah only to this person because they're Jewish, but you don't care if you spread it to the non-Jew? If the idea is to spread the concept of Hashem Echad, right, spreading the concept of God, why should it, if it's only a religious concept, what should it matter if a person is Jewish or not Jewish? In fact, what does it mean to call a person Jewish, right, without a religious belief? How can you say the Bishop of Paris is Jewish? But somehow we are still thinking that way, because somehow we still have that people concept. On the other hand, we understand that we still feel that aspect of people concept for people who advocate for people. Therefore, their action in advocating for people is somehow we see as positive, but obviously problematic because they're also going keneged halacha. So we have challenges of how to relate to them. So the fact is, this created a tremendous hashkafic problem in the 1800s. How do you relate to this new phenomenon? Jews who want to call themselves Jews with a new definition. Up until that time, you have to recognize that up until that time, a person wanted to come up with their own idea, right? Here's our date. Bye. We'll see you. You don't have to relate to you as part of our people. There's actually, like, for example, when Christianity developed, okay, they at some point in time basically say, okay, go, please leave us, go form your own community, don't call yourself Jews. And we were very, very happy that they actually went out to the world. In fact, my Rabbi mentioned to me that he read one position, which is a remarkable position, that basically Chazal actually, there's a few people actually say that Paul was sent by Chazal to do something. There's a few shila. Yaakov Enden says that Paul was sent by Chazal to go and spread the Shem Mitzvahs B'nai Noach to the world. Okay, that's the position of Yaakov Enden. So basically he's saying that Paul was really a good guy and was trying to go spread Shem Mitzvahs B'nai Noach out there to that. But Rabbi said there was another position, which I heard before also. He said, someone else said that Paul was sent to get the non-Jews, the believers in Jesus outside of the Jewish community. Paul started breaking down the unique Jewish definitions of this Christian religion, started making it open to the Gentiles, and basically that was under directions of Chazal. Get it out of the community. We want you not to be part of the Jewish world. The concept of Malshim al Tikva, which a lot of people say was written keneged the early Christians, was to try and say, listen, we don't want you being in our community with this idea. You want to go believe your faith, but don't change the Jewish world. So the truth is, we are very interested in the idea of Jewish unity is not the prime value within Torah. Okay, the Karaites, you got some of that? Please, just form your own stuff and stay away from me. Now we have a whole concept of Jewish unity, but there's a big difference, because there wasn't this problem. We want to stay defined as Jews. The Karaites were happy to define themselves by a different group. Now what happened is that there were still people saying, we're Jews, and we're all Jews. And they didn't want to be separate. They wanted to be part of Jews. So how do we relate to that? It's a lot easier to relate to someone and say, listen, you got your own faith, I got my own faith. Let's, maybe we'll know how to relate to each other. I'm not, but the fact is, there's you guys, my guys. But now we have some type of, way that we're also connected, and that specifically was found within the secularism, within the peoplehood concepts. That the peoplehood concepts were basically putting us all together as Jews, and yet at the same time causing challenges of how we relate to this. Okay, so this leads to how do we relate? How do we relate to these developments? So one is the position of the Chasam Sofer. The position of Chasam Sofer was basically we got to protect our own community. So basically, they put up a wall. They basically said, we're going to entrench, we put up a wall, we're on this side of the wall, they're on that side of the wall. Okay, if someone wanted to barge their way into this side of the wall because they're Jewish, we'll let them barge their way into the side of the wall. But basically, we're going to keep a division between us. Right? And that was really motivated by the religious perspective. Right? The focus was religion. There was a peoplehood aspect, but the focus was religion, and you have to be the pure, you have to follow the Das. Then there was a viewpoint of Shimshon Hirsch. Shimshon Hirsch had a very strong attitude to any deviation in religious perspective. Okay? This was the Frankfurt School. Everyone talks to him as a secularist and so forth and so forth. People don't recognize that the strong Aguda position against any interactive with the non-Orthodox, which was Aguda's position for many, many years, no interaction with the non-Orthodox, they were not involved in any governments with non-Orthodox and so forth and so forth for many, many years. That was from the Hirschian school. The Hirschians would have nothing to do with any non-Orthodox Jewish expression. Absolutely nothing to do with it. Okay? But Shimshon Hirsch still had an attitude towards peoplehood. And how did that express? Through Kiruv. But he wasn't Mekarev to everyone. He didn't try and tell everyone, hey, there's a God. He specifically wanted to reach out to people who are Jews, which is really the modern Kiruv. If you're Jewish, we want to bring you back into Torah. Why only this person? Why only this person? They bring you under the comfort of Shekhinah. Why don't you care about everyone else? Because there's a certain aspect that the peoplehood, the nation, has to be part of it. We make a distinction. Peoplehood makes a distinction not based upon faith. In other words, there's a distinction based upon people. So we want, our faith tells the people that this people are unique, and we want to bring those people under the comfort of Shekhinah. And that really showed that the Hirschian school was very much focused on the religious side, and then went to the peoplehood. But then, then you start moving away from it as you start bringing out the concepts of peoplehood. So you start having the perceptions of Rav Kook, for example. So Rav Kook saw value in peoplehood, and he saw the early Chidushim developing Eretz Yisrael, and he saw in peoplehood a value. These guys are building up Eretz Yisrael again. These guys are coming back to have a tremendous Avos Yisrael, of his Eretz Yisrael. So there's something good in what they're doing. So Rav Kook really believed eventually they'd come back to Torah. He felt it was an aberration. But the point is that at this development, he is reaching out. He is basically saying, hey, there's something about people that is good, and we have to be collectively part of this people. From a religious perspective. And those are the tensions that exist there, coming out of that distinction between nation and religion. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go a little bit further along this idea, expand upon it. But I just want to end up with, just to give you a structure of nation and religion, just to work with. I'll tell you my own understanding of it. I think that most Jews, I'm going to draw it as a matrix. I think most Jews don't recognize that really in Jewish identity, you really have to drive a matrix like this, that graph like that. And the poles along those graphs are, we'll call it believer, non-believer, okay, Jew, and non-Jew. Okay? So, what do you call a believer who's a Jew? In other words, the observant Jew. Kosher Yid, right? He's a good guy, right? What do you call the believer who's a non-Jew? Ger Tosher v'Mechasidim Olam. A righteous Gentile. Not like the Yad Vashem righteous Gentile. The righteous Gentile is, in the pure sense of the word, a believer in the religion of Judaism who is not Jewish.
A believer who wants to practice Judaism?
No, a believer in the religion of Judaism who wants to practice Judaism for non-Jews. So the uniqueness about Judaism as a religion, which is remarkable, is that Judaism as a religion says, okay, this is the belief, and the belief says that there are two different codes for two different people. If you are Jewish, you got to follow the Taryag code. If you are not Jewish, you have to follow the Noachide code. According to Rama, if you're B'nai Keturah, you have to get Mila as well. But the fact is it's a remarkable statement of the religion making distinctions based upon peoplehood. But that's really what the religion does. So you have believing non-Jews. There's a definition of a category like that. A good Noachite. Okay. Now, what do you call a non-Jew who is a non-believer? Akum. An idolater. Right? That's a non-Jew, is an idolater. And basically it's both categories there. And you get to issues with this. Like in halachas that deal with non-Jews, it's because they're idolater or because they were not Jewish. This is a big issue. But generally, certain halachas, the very fact they're not Jewish, even if they were believing Ger Toshev, they have certain different halachas towards them. And there's other people who say, no, it's basically an idolater, a non-Jew. Now here's the key though. What do you call a Jew who's a non-believer or non-practicing? What do you call that person? Apikoros, Mumer. The fact is, this is the definition. He's a Jew not in good standings. And the fact is that there are certain laws in that relationship which can be very stringent. They lose certain rights. They can't be an aide, they can't be a witness, and there are certain rights. The point is we have another category which the Rambam introduced, and that was the concept of Tinuk Shenishba. That if they were a non-believer for a legitimate reason, because they weren't taught and so forth, the other influences, then we will not put them in the category of Mumer, which has very strong negative connotations to it, with negative consequences. We'll put it in the category of Tinuk Shenishba. And then you get into issues of what is a Tinuk Shenishba's actual status. Like, for example, we say that Adam had to be Shomer Shabbos, right? Okay? Okay, usually if you have 80 Kedushin, they usually ask, are you Shomer Shabbos? We say a person not Shomer Shabbos can't be an aid. So there's an interesting aspect about this. If you look at the argument, there's actually shitas that hold. Okay, generally most people hold that a Tinuk Shenishba also can't be an aid. There are shitas that hold that a Tinuk Shenishba could be an aid. That the only one who's not an aid is a mumer, which is a person who is in this category fully. Non-believer, a Jew who's a total non-practicing non-believer, b'mezid. But if he's a Tinuk Shenishba, then he doesn't lose his status as a kosher Jew, and therefore he's aid. But we generally paskin no, Tinuk Shenishba can't be an aid. It needs a positive statement of observance to be an aid. So this gets into issues. You get this other issue around in terms of, let's say, touching wine. Can a non-Shomer Shabbos person touch wine? So some people say, no, it's not Shomer Shabbos. Other people say, no, it's Tinuk Shenishba touches it, it's okay. Great. So you get into these issues back and forth. Yeah.
Similar to the issue of the difference between an Apikoros and an Amharitz. The Apikoros is actually educated, knowledgeable,
right, exactly.
And rejects it,
right.
As opposed to someone who is ignorant.
Right. And that was a Tinuk Shenishba definition. The truth is, what the Rambam did with Tinuk Shenishba is said that even if he's knowledgeable, if he can have a tremendous amount of knowledge, but the fact is that he doesn't believe in it, right, because he was incorrectly taught from the beginning, right, so he can still be a Tinuk Shenishba. It's not just the fact you have all the knowledge, you also have to accept the knowledge correctly. So with his perception, like he says, the children of the founders of the Karaites who were brought up as Karaites, maybe they learned about Torah and all correctly, but they're still Tinuk Shenishbas because they were incorrectly taught from the beginning. But the fact that most people don't recognize is this is the definition. This is the way I understand the definition of Jewish identity. So what occurred was you started having, and this is the way, as a halachic Jew, we can connect peoplehood and religion together. This is how we can connect them. The point is if you have a division, which is what occurs what occurred out of the Jewish Reformation. Okay, we were left with trying to hold religion and nation together like this, while we started having influences. Reform Judaism, we are a religion, right? We're not a people, and therefore conversion to Reform Judaism is conversion to Reform Judaism. I mean, really, when you were thinking about this, Geras Kahalacha, it's really a very strange thing. Geras Kahalacha, if you translate Geras, Geras is actually much more similar to immigration than conversion. If you translate conversion, right? Of course you have to believe in the faith. If you're a Reformed Jew, of course, I can't accept a Reformed Jewish conversion. Person's converting to Reformed Judaism. What does that have to do with me? It's like saying to me, hey, if someone converts to be a Mormon, you should be accepted by Roman Catholicism. He converted to be a Mormon, to the Mormon religion. So if a person's going for conversion, and I'll tell you an interesting story once. When I was a rabbi in Kingston, New York, there was this really nice guy. We wanted to start a day school. And we had an open house, started a day school in our shul and so forth. A guy came by and asked me about it. Well, I'm telling you, a real Erlich guy, unbelievably nice guy. He converted as a Reformed Jew. And his wife converted as a Reformed Jew. And he wanted to know whether he'd be able to send his kids to the day school. I said, it's going to be a Torah Masoret day school, it has to be halakhically Jewish. So he said, okay, that's very sad. I really wanted to send my kids to day school, but I can't because you guys don't accept my conversion. So I said to him, you know something, you're a really fine guy. Why don't you investigate? This is back when he had a little bit more lenient standards in terms of Orthodox conversion at the time. But I said, why don't you investigate an Orthodox conversion? Right? Probably bring him along or whatever. Why don't you investigate an Orthodox conversion? He got angry at me. He said, Rabbi, I converted to Reform Judaism because that is what I believe in. I am not going to create a fraud. That is not my belief. So this is what I believed in. So if you really think about this idea of conversion, and it's an example of conversion and nation being all mixed up. Conversion is imagine, hi, God, come in, I want to convert to Roman Catholicism, but I don't believe in Jesus. Listen, I want to become a Muslim, but I really think Muhammad is just like a camel driver. Guys, just get out of here. You have to do it. But no, we have this whole concept. Guy can come in and say, I don't believe in this religion, but we convert him. Why? Because you're not interested in conversion. You're interested in some kind of statement that he's a member of the people. Which, by the way, halakhically it is. The truth of the matter is that you do have to become part of the people, but since the nation comes out of the religion, you basically establish the idea of you got to accept the religion before you can say I want to be part of this people. Okay, so that's really it. Now, in this last statement I just made, there's an article in here called National Identity, which really presents a different, some aspects of this difference. The truth is that our peoplehood comes out of our religion. The Das of Torah says that there's a unique nation, Klal Yisrael, that the religion says is unique and gives different rules to. Okay? The point is how do you understand it? The truth is, if you stress peoplehood, what I find in terms of general attitude of peoplehood is they see the religion as the expression of our culture, which is really Reconstructionist Judaism, of a reconstructed civilization. The religion is the culture of this nation. Right? Tomorrow Americans watch football on Thanksgiving with turkey. Jews on Yom Kippur, they don't eat. So that's the expression of our national identity, right? So the point is that's it. So the religion becomes our expression of national identity if you come out of the people idea. But if you come out of the religion idea, it's religion, and then it creates peoplehood. So this gives you some ideas of that tension, how it got involved in Torah and Rav Kook's idea that this idea of peoplehood does have a source in Torah, so it can't be totally dismissed. It seems that they're trying to do something that has value within Torah, right? But Shimshon Perush, who really came out of more in Germany, was really fighting Reform Judaism, and very much in terms of the religion aspect, basically said, I don't want anything to do with the Reform. So we're gonna pick up more on this next week.